Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and realized they stopped seeing you the way they once did? The warmth is gone, the softness replaced by indifference. And yet, you keep hoping that if you just love them harder, they'll remember who you are. But love without respect slowly kills something inside you. It's not the shouting that breaks you. It's the silence, the dismissal, the feeling that your voice no longer matters. This isn't just about losing someone else. It's about losing yourself in the process. And at some point, you have to stop asking, "Why doesn't she respect me?" and start asking, "Why am I allowing it?" Because the moment you wake up to that truth, everything changes. Respect is the foundation of every real connection. It's what keeps love upright when emotions shift, when attraction fades, when life becomes messy. Respect is not something that arrives after love. It's what allows love to exist in the first place. Without it, affection becomes shallow, intimacy becomes manipulation, and partnership becomes control. People often mistake love for enough, as if love alone can sustain two people through everything. But love without respect is like building a home on sand. It might look beautiful for a while, but the first storm reveals what was missing all along. Respect is not given only when someone proves themselves worthy. It is given because you recognize their humanity, their individuality, their dignity. In a relationship, respect means seeing your partner as a whole person, not as an accessory to your desires, not as a reflection of your insecurities, but as someone with thoughts, emotions, and needs that are equally valid as your own. It's the ability to disagree without demeaning, to correct without humiliating, to love without controlling. When you respect someone, you honor their autonomy. You allow them space to be themselves, even when who they are challenges your comfort. Yet, so many relationships confuse passion with respect. In the early stages of attraction, everything feels exciting and intense. You want to be close, to merge, to become one. But true closeness doesn't come from fusion. It comes from recognition, from seeing the other as separate but valuable. When that recognition disappears, love starts to shrink. You stop listening and start projecting. You stop asking and start assuming. You stop admiring and start managing. The more one person tries to dominate, fix, or control, the less respect there is left to hold the relationship together. Disrespect often begins subtly. It doesn't always sound cruel or look violent. Sometimes it's a sarcastic comment dismissed as a joke. Sometimes it's ignoring your boundaries, cutting you off mid-sentence, or trivializing your emotions. Sometimes it's refusing to take responsibility, turning every disagreement into a blame game. It's in the moments when your truth is minimized or mocked, when you start questioning whether your feelings even matter. The danger is that over time, you begin to accept it as normal. You start thinking, maybe I am too sensitive, or maybe this is just how relationships are. And just like that, the erosion begins. Love can survive conflict. In fact, healthy conflict can deepen understanding. But love cannot survive contempt. Contempt is the poison that kills intimacy quietly. When one partner looks at the other with superiority, with the belief that they know better, do better, deserve better, the emotional connection begins to fracture. Respect is not about agreement, it's about regard. You don't need to always share the same view, but you must share the same value, that both voices matter. The absence of that respect creates emotional distance far deeper than silence ever could. People often think that love naturally includes respect, that if someone says they love you, respect must be there too. But that's not true. Someone can love how you make them feel, love your care, your body, your loyalty, and still not respect you as an equal. They can love you for the comfort you provide, but disregard your boundaries when it inconveniences them. They can claim love while still talking over you, dismissing your pain, or deciding your life for you. Love without respect becomes selfish. It's no longer about. It's about me and how you make me feel. Respect is quiet. It's not flashy like romance or dramatic like passion. It's found in small moments. In listening when you'd rather defend yourself. In showing patience when your partner falters. In speaking honestly instead of manipulating. It's in letting someone have their space without fear. In giving them the freedom to express themselves without judgment. It's not about control, it's about trust. And trust is impossible without respect. When you know your voice matters, when your truth is heard, that's when you feel safe enough to love freely. A relationship built on respect doesn't mean it's free of conflict or mistakes. It means that even in disagreement, both people hold the same ground of dignity. They fight to understand, not to win. They can be angry but not cruel, disappointed but not demeaning. They can correct each other without crushing each other. Respect creates emotional safety. The assurance that no matter what happens, neither person will use vulnerability as a weapon. When respect disappears, even love starts to feel like pressure. You feel like you must perform to earn approval, hide parts of yourself to avoid criticism, or shrink to maintain peace. You begin to compromise your voice to preserve connection. But the truth is, love cannot thrive in an environment where one person must diminish themselves to be accepted. Without respect, love turns into endurance. You stay not because you're fulfilled, but because you're afraid of the emptiness that might follow. Respect is the foundation that makes love stable, reliable, and enduring. It is what keeps attraction from turning into possession, and care from turning into control. When respect exists, both people can grow individually and together. They can inspire each other, challenge each other, and still feel safe enough to be honest. It's what allows love to mature beyond the initial spark of desire and become something real. Something that sustains through years, through change, through imperfection. The relationships that last are not built on constant romance or passion alone. They're built on mutual regard, a deep understanding that both people are worthy of care, of space, of truth. Respect is not an accessory to love, it is the ground beneath it. When it's missing, no amount of affection can compensate. When it's present, even silence feels safe. That's why it's not enough to be loved. You must also be respected. Because love can make you feel wanted. But only respect can make you feel valued. When someone doesn't respect you, it changes everything about the dynamic of the relationship. Not just what is said, but how it feels to exist within it. You begin to notice it not in grand gestures, but in small, quiet dismissals. The tone that cuts you off mid-thought. The way your words are met with silence or mockery. The subtle eye roll that says your opinion isn't worth considering. Disrespect is often invisible at first. It hides behind excuses. That's just how I talk. Or, don't take it so seriously. But beneath those words is a deeper message: your feelings are secondary, your boundaries are flexible, and your dignity is negotiable. A person who respects you listens when you speak. They might not always agree, but they value your right to express yourself. They do not interrupt to dominate the conversation, or use their intelligence as a weapon to make you feel small. When someone stops listening, they stop seeing you as an equal. You become a background sound in their world. Disrespect turns you into an object, not someone to connect with, but someone to manage, fix, or control. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's just the lack of attention, the emotional absence, the unwillingness to engage when it doesn't serve them. There's a difference between someone challenging you to grow and someone belittling you to maintain control. Disrespect hides under manipulation. It comes dressed as advice, as jokes, as concern. I'm just saying this because I care. But underneath, it's about power. It's about asserting dominance, subtly reminding you that you are beneath them in some way. The moment someone treats your vulnerability as weakness instead of trust, the respect begins to fade. Love cannot live long in that kind of atmosphere, because love needs equality to breathe. When you stay in an environment where disrespect is constant, you begin to internalize it. You start doubting your own perception. Was it really that bad? You begin apologizing for things you didn't do, over-explaining your emotions, trying to fix what isn't yours to fix. This is the quiet danger of disrespect. It makes you shrink without realizing it. It teaches you to lower your expectations little by little, until you're content with crumbs of decency. You start confusing tolerance with patience, endurance with loyalty. But there is nothing noble in tolerating what breaks your spirit. People who don't respect you will often twist the narrative to make you feel guilty for wanting basic decency. If you ask for consideration, they say you're too sensitive. If you express discomfort, they call you dramatic. They turn your boundaries into burdens, your needs into weaknesses. The more you defend yourself, the more they act like you're overreacting. This is how disrespect becomes a cycle. One person diminishes, and the other justifies it. The more you allow it, the more it grows. Because disrespect thrives in silence. You can love someone deeply, and still need to protect your self-worth. Love should never require you to accept humiliation or emotional neglect. It's not a sign of strength to stay quiet while being disrespected. It's a sign that you've forgotten your value. Respect is not a privilege you must earn by being perfect or agreeable. It is the baseline of any meaningful connection. If someone cannot give you that, then what they're offering isn't love. It's control disguised as affection. Disrespect also reveals a person's relationship with themselves. Someone who feels small inside often tries to make others feel smaller. They project their insecurities through criticism, sarcasm, or emotional withdrawal. They cannot tolerate equality because equality would mean vulnerability, and vulnerability scares them. So instead of opening up, they push others down. Understanding this doesn't excuse their behavior, but it helps you see the truth. Their disrespect says more about them than it ever will about you. When you recognize disrespect, it becomes a turning point. You can no longer pretend you didn't see it. You begin to understand that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of mutual respect. You realize that silence does not keep the love alive. It only keeps you small. Walking away is not about revenge or pride. It's about reclaiming your dignity. It's about remembering that you deserve relationships where you don't have to explain why you deserve kindness. Respect isn't something that grows from fear or guilt. It grows from appreciation. When someone respects you, they want to understand you, not manage you. They care about your feelings even when they're inconvenient. They don't need to always be right. They just need to be fair. Respect is about seeing someone's humanity, not their utility. When you lose that recognition, the relationship stops being a partnership and becomes a hierarchy. One person becomes the authority, and the other becomes the follower. That is not love. That's emotional submission. Disrespect doesn't always mean shouting or insults. Sometimes it's indifference. The way someone forgets your needs, ignores your efforts, or takes your presence for granted. It's when they treat your kindness as an obligation rather than a gift. It's when they expect your patience, but never offer understanding in return. The absence of respect is not just an emotional wound. It's an erosion of identity. You begin to lose the confidence to stand tall, because you've been made to feel invisible. The most painful part of being disrespected is realizing that you taught someone how to treat you by what you allowed. It doesn't mean the disrespect is your fault, but it means you now have the power to change it. You can set boundaries, demand honesty, and most importantly, choose not to accept behavior that makes you question your worth. Sometimes respect doesn't come from the other person. It begins with you, with the moment you decide that your peace matters more than their approval. Disrespect is the silent killer of intimacy. It doesn't destroy love instantly. It starves it slowly. Every dismissive comment, every invalidation, every ignored emotion chips away at connection, until there's nothing left but exhaustion. The most courageous thing you can do, when you recognize it, is not to fight harder for their validation, but to walk away with your head held high. Because the truth is simple. Someone who truly values you will never make you beg for respect. When you tolerate disrespect, even once, you set a silent precedent for how you will be treated. Every time you swallow your pain and convince yourself that it's not a big deal, you are teaching someone that their behavior has no consequence. Disrespect doesn't begin as a hurricane. It starts as a drizzle, a small, subtle dismissal that seems harmless. Maybe she interrupts you, mocks your feelings, or makes decisions without consulting you. You feel a sting, but you let it go because you don't want conflict. You tell yourself it's not worth arguing about. Yet, every time you do, you give permission for the same thing to happen again. Slowly, you stop standing up for yourself, not because you agree, but because you've learned that peace requires silence. What you may not realize is that silence communicates as powerfully as words. When you do not correct behavior that hurts you, you're not avoiding conflict. You're shaping the relationship. You're saying, "You can treat me this way, and I'll still stay." Humans learn from feedback. If you praise good behavior, it grows. If you ignore bad behavior, it spreads. This is true in love, just as it is in every other human dynamic. When you allow disrespect to exist without resistance, you build a pattern that slowly defines the relationship. What began as love becomes tolerance. What began as equality becomes control. And soon, your silence becomes a cage of your own making. Boundaries are not walls. They are instructions for how others can love you. When you communicate them clearly, you protect your emotional well-being and create mutual understanding. But when you fail to set them, people assume they can cross them. Not because they are evil or cruel, but because you haven't taught them otherwise. People treat you in accordance with what you accept. If someone raises their voice, mocks you, or dismisses your emotions, and you respond by apologizing or retreating, you show them that your peace is negotiable. They begin to believe that disrespect is part of the dynamic, and soon it becomes normal. You end up trapped in a cycle of disrespect that you unknowingly help sustain. In relationships, it's easy to confuse kindness with submission. You tell yourself you're being patient, understanding, forgiving. But patience without boundaries is self-betrayal. Understanding without accountability enables harm. You think you're saving the relationship, but you're only delaying the inevitable collapse. Every act of tolerance at the expense of your self-worth chips away at your confidence, your identity, your sense of being seen. You start to believe that this is the price of love. That being loved means being quiet, agreeable, or less demanding. But love that asks you to silence your truth is not love. It's control disguised as care. Many people who tolerate disrespect do so because they fear loss. You fear that if you speak up, she might leave, withdraw affection, or turn cold. But here's the truth. If your honesty threatens the relationship, then what you have isn't love. It's dependency. The person who truly loves you will not fear your truth. They will respect it. They will not punish you for asserting your boundaries. They will appreciate your strength. The one who becomes distant when you express pain is not losing love. They are losing control. And that's the difference between being respected and being managed. Disrespect is not always loud or cruel. It can come in small, habitual ways, ignoring your needs, laughing at your discomfort, deciding for you, or comparing you to others. These small actions seem unimportant in isolation, but together, they form a pattern of emotional dominance. When you stay quiet, you teach the other person that this dominance is acceptable. Over time, you begin to adjust yourself around their moods. You speak less freely. You filter your truth. You stop being yourself to keep the peace. But peace built on silence is fragile. It only lasts until your self-respect finally rebels. There's a dangerous illusion in believing that endurance equals loyalty. Staying despite being disrespected doesn't make you strong. It makes you invisible. Love does not require you to shrink to fit someone else's comfort. It requires courage to stand firm, to say, "This is not okay," and mean it. When you finally assert that boundary, you may lose people who benefited from your silence. But you will gain something more powerful, yourself. And once you regain that, you will see how much energy you wasted trying to make others comfortable while you suffered quietly. When you teach someone how to treat you, it's not through grand speeches or emotional outbursts. It's through consistency. It's through the quiet power of saying no, the strength of walking away from disrespect, and the calmness of not engaging in chaos. People who respect you will adjust. Those who don't will leave. Either way, you win. Because your boundaries are not meant to control others. They are meant to protect your peace. The most painful truth is that disrespect doesn't survive without your participation. It thrives when you excuse it, justify it, or rationalize it. It weakens the moment you stop defending it. Once you stop making excuses for someone's behavior and start holding them accountable, the relationship changes. It either grows stronger through mutual respect, or it ends, and either outcome brings freedom. Because you cannot build a life of dignity while staying loyal to what diminishes you. It's time to understand that setting boundaries is not an act of aggression. It's an act of self-love. You don't owe anyone endless patience at the cost of your peace. You don't have to prove your worth by enduring mistreatment. When you teach people that your kindness has limits, they begin to see your value more clearly. When you stop tolerating disrespect, you remind yourself that love should never feel like survival. Every relationship reflects the energy you bring into it. If you lead with self-respect, you invite respect in return. If you lead with fear, you attract control. You deserve a love that honors your boundaries, that listens when you speak, that values your feelings as much as its own. But that love will never arrive if you continue to allow disrespect to stay. You must first show the world how to treat you, by refusing to accept anything less than what you deserve. Self-respect is the silent force that shapes every relationship you have. It is not arrogance, and it is not pride. It is the quiet understanding of your own worth, the invisible standard that dictates how you allow others to treat you. When you carry yourself with self-respect, you communicate without words that you will not be diminished to keep someone else comfortable. It's not about demanding special treatment, but about refusing to be treated as less than what you are. The truth is, People learn how to value you by observing how you value yourself. If you constantly apologize for existing, if you minimize your emotions, if you let others cross your boundaries without consequence, you teach them that your dignity is negotiable. When you lose respect for yourself, the world senses it. You start giving too much, explaining too much, and tolerating too much. You begin to accept behaviors that once would have shattered your peace. This happens gradually, like erosion. It's not one moment, but many small compromises. You tell yourself it's not worth the argument, that love requires patience, that it's better to stay quiet than to cause conflict. But every silence, every surrender of your boundaries, every swallowed truth, is a brick removed from the structure of your self-worth. Eventually, you find yourself in a relationship where your feelings are disregarded, your needs are invisible, and your voice is unheard. Self-respect is not about control, it's about clarity. It's knowing what aligns with your values and what violates them. It's understanding that love without respect is dependence, and attention without care is manipulation. A person who truly respects themselves does not chase validation, because they already recognize their inherent value. They do not beg to be seen, because they stand firmly in their identity. They can love deeply without losing themselves, because they know love is not meant to erase individuality, but to honor it. The way you respond to disrespect is the mirror that reflects your level of self-respect. If you respond with silence, you are teaching that your pain doesn't matter. If you respond with anger, you are showing that your emotions can be easily controlled. But if you respond with calm distance, with the strength to walk away, you demonstrate power. Self-respect does not need to shout. It simply exits what no longer aligns with it. It understands that you cannot force someone to see your worth, but you can refuse to let them blind you to it. There is a misconception that setting boundaries means you are being selfish or cold. In reality, boundaries are acts of love. Love for yourself and for the relationship. They tell the other person, this is where I end, and you begin. This is how we can love each other without harm. When you have self-respect, your boundaries become clear and non-negotiable. You do not explain them endlessly, and you do not apologize for having them. You simply live them. People who truly care will adjust. Those who don't were only comfortable with the version of you who didn't know your worth. When you don't have self-respect, you seek it from others. You start believing that love will give you value, that affection will heal your insecurity, that someone's attention will make you whole. But no one can give you what you refuse to give yourself. When you rely on another person to define your worth, you hand them the power to destroy it. That's why so many people feel lost when a relationship ends. They didn't lose a partner. They lost their source of identity. But self-respect makes you immune to that kind of collapse. You can grieve love without losing yourself, because you were whole before they came, and you remain whole when they leave. Having self-respect also changes the kind of love you attract. When you honor yourself, you no longer settle for attention disguised as care or control, disguised as love. You stop chasing people who make you feel like you have to earn their kindness. You begin to notice the difference between someone who loves you and someone who uses you. You recognize that peace is not boring, that calm is not emptiness, and that love without mutual respect is not love. It's dependence dressed in affection. There will be times when your self-respect requires you to walk away from someone you deeply love. That's the hardest part. It's not about ego, it's about preservation. Because the moment you start betraying yourself to keep someone else, you lose both. You lose your dignity and the authenticity of the relationship. Love should never demand the sacrifice of your soul. The right person will never ask you to dim your light, just so they can shine brighter. Self-respect also requires courage. The courage to be alone, to face discomfort, to resist the urge to settle for less than you deserve. Many people stay in disrespectful relationships because they fear loneliness more than they fear losing themselves. But loneliness is not the absence of love, it's the absence of connection to yourself. When you rebuild that connection, when you start honoring your values again, solitude becomes peace, not punishment. In a world that often confuses self-respect with arrogance, it takes strength to hold your head high without apology. It takes maturity to say, I will not stay where I am not valued, without bitterness. And it takes self-awareness to realize that your worth is not dependent on someone else's validation. The love you seek from others is the reflection of the love you first show yourself. If you treat yourself as sacred, others will sense that energy. If you treat yourself as secondary, others will confirm it. Self-respect is not built overnight. It grows through the small choices you make every day. Every time you say no to what drains you. Every time you honor your needs. Every time you choose peace over chaos. You strengthen it. It's in the decision to speak your truth, even when your voice shakes. It's in the quiet exit from what no longer aligns with your dignity. It's in the refusal to let anyone rewrite your worth story. You teach others how to love you by the way you love yourself. If you accept neglect, you receive neglect. If you demand respect through your actions, not your words, you'll attract it. The more you respect yourself, the more authentic your relationships become, because they will no longer be based on fear, guilt, or dependency. They will be based on equality, admiration, and genuine connection. Self-respect is not the opposite of love. It is the root of it. When love loses respect, it slowly transforms into dependency. What once felt like connection begins to feel like obligation, and what once nourished your soul starts to drain it. Many people stay in relationships where love still exists, but respect has vanished, and they call it loyalty. But love without respect is not loyalty, it's fear. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over. Fear of admitting that something once beautiful has turned into something suffocating. When respect fades, love doesn't disappear immediately. It lingers like an echo of what was once real. You still remember the laughter, the closeness, the way things used to feel, and you cling to those memories as if they can bring it all back. But memories cannot replace mutual regard, and nostalgia cannot rebuild what disrespect has torn down. Love built on dependency often feels intense, but it's not intimacy, it's survival. You begin to rely on the other person not for joy, but for identity. Their approval becomes your oxygen. You measure your worth through their moods, their attention, their affection. When they're kind, you feel alive. When they withdraw, you feel invisible. It's an emotional roller coaster that keeps you addicted to the highs while ignoring the devastating lows. You start to believe that this chaos is what passion feels like, but it's not passion. It's emotional instability. The longer you stay, the more you confuse attachment with love. True love gives you peace. Dependency gives you anxiety. When a person disrespects you, even subtly, and you continue to stay, you begin to mold yourself into someone smaller. You edit your opinions, suppress your voice, and minimize your needs, all in the hope of avoiding conflict or rejection. You begin to fear speaking the truth, because you know it might lead to distance, and distance feels unbearable. So you shrink, you soften, you apologize for things you didn't do, and little by little, you start disappearing inside your own relationship. You think you're protecting the love, but what you're really protecting is the illusion of connection. Real connection requires equality. Dependency requires submission. Dependency disguises itself as devotion. You start believing that your willingness to endure pain is proof of how deeply you love. You tell yourself that patience is strength, that loyalty means staying no matter how you're treated. But this isn't patience. It's fear of loss. You've built your emotional home inside someone else, and leaving feels like losing the ground beneath your feet. The truth, however, is that love that demands you to betray yourself worth isn't love. It's emotional bondage. The chains are invisible, but they're heavy, and they keep you tied to someone who has forgotten how to see your value. Love without respect damages your sense of self, because it teaches you to equate love with suffering. You start believing that love must hurt, that being misunderstood is normal, that being ignored is part of being committed. You begin to romanticize dysfunction. No relationship is perfect. You tell yourself, even though deep down, you know something isn't right. The problem isn't imperfection, it's imbalance. When one person controls the emotional rhythm, and the other is always adjusting, the connection becomes one-sided. Love cannot flourish in an environment where one person constantly sacrifices peace to maintain harmony. Dependency also breeds emotional blindness. You start seeing the other person not as they are, but as who you need them to be. You justify their behavior, reinterpret their coldness, and convince yourself that they'll change. You hold on to potential instead of reality. You make excuses for their disrespect, saying things like, "They're just stressed," or "They didn't mean it." But every excuse you make becomes a permission slip for continued disrespect. Dependency doesn't just keep you attached to the other person. It keeps you detached from the truth. When love loses respect, conversations stop being about connection and start being about control. You no longer talk to be understood. You talk to avoid conflict. You say what you think they want to hear, not what you truly feel. Your emotions become filtered through fear, and soon, honesty becomes impossible. Without respect, communication is manipulation disguised as dialogue. One person demands, the other complies, and the cycle continues. Love, stripped of mutual respect, becomes a performance rather than a partnership. The hardest part about being in a love without respect is that you start losing your reflection. You look in the mirror and don't recognize who you've become. The vibrant, confident person you once were has turned into someone cautious, anxious, and dependent on another's validation. You crave peace but keep choosing the chaos that destroys it. You justify it in the name of love, but deep down, you know that what you're calling love is fear of emptiness. Real love doesn't drain your spirit. It restores it. It doesn't make you question your worth. It reminds you of it. When you find yourself trapped in a love without respect, the awakening comes in quiet moments. It's when you realize that you've been walking on eggshells for too long, that you've forgotten what it feels like to speak freely, to laugh without tension, to rest without anxiety. That realization hurts. It feels like losing everything. But in truth, you're not losing love. You're losing the illusion of it. You're shedding the layers of dependency that kept you tied to something that was never safe to begin with. Reclaiming self-respect after dependency is like learning to breathe again. At first, it feels foreign. You might feel guilty for setting boundaries or for saying no. You might miss the person who disrespected you, not because they treated you well, but because you got used to the pattern of chaos. But as you rebuild your confidence, as you learn to love yourself without needing someone's validation, you begin to understand that love and dependency cannot coexist. One frees you, the other confines you. One nurtures your soul, the other erases it. True love cannot exist without respect. Because respect is what keeps love safe. It's what allows both people to be fully themselves, without fear of judgment or control. It's what transforms love from possession into partnership. Without it, love becomes a form of emotional imprisonment. The moment you choose to honor your dignity over dependency, you don't lose love. You make room for the kind that won't require you to abandon yourself to feel worthy of it. Waking up is not a single moment. It is a slow, painful, and liberating process. It begins in the silence of your own mind, where the truth starts whispering louder than the lies you've been telling yourself. You start to see that love without respect is not love, that comfort without peace is not safety, and that staying where you are constantly diminished is not loyalty. It's fear. The hardest part of waking up is not leaving someone else. It's admitting to yourself that you have been asleep in your own life. You've been clinging to the hope that things will change, that if you just love harder, stay quieter, or forgive again, it will all fall back into place. But it never does. You wake up the day you stop trying to make someone see your worth and start seeing it for yourself. When you begin to wake up, the illusion starts to crumble. You see how often you settled for half love, half effort, half presence. You realize how many times you told yourself that the good moments made up for the pain. You start replaying the small acts of disrespect you ignored. The mocking tone, the dismissive look, the lack of interest in your feelings. And you finally understand that they were not small at all. They were the quiet indicators of something much larger, the absence of respect. For so long, you told yourself that leaving would mean failure, that staying showed strength. But now you see that staying without self-worth is not strength, it's surrender. Waking up means reclaiming your dignity, even if it means standing alone. There's a strange kind of grief that comes with this awakening. You don't just mourn the person you're leaving. You mourn the version of yourself who accepted so little. You feel sorrow for the moments you betrayed your own needs, for the times you stayed silent, when your heart was screaming to be heard. You realize how often you confused patience with submission, forgiveness with forgetting, love with dependency. This grief is necessary because it clears the path for clarity. You cannot build a new life until you grieve the parts of yourself that got lost in the old one. Waking up means seeing that peace doesn't come from fixing someone else's attitude or convincing them to change. It comes from refusing to let their behavior define your self-worth. It's about understanding that love is not supposed to make you question yourself. It's supposed to strengthen who you already are. The moment you begin to value your own peace over the illusion of control, everything changes. You stop chasing explanations for someone else's disrespect. You stop analyzing their moods and start protecting your own energy. You realize that emotional chaos is not proof of deep connection. It's evidence of imbalance. People often confuse comfort with happiness. They think that because they've been with someone for years, it means they're meant to stay. But comfort can also mean familiarity with pain. You can become comfortable being ignored, disrespected, or emotionally neglected. It's easier to stay in the known suffering than to face the unknown of starting over. Waking up means shattering that comfort. It means realizing that familiarity is not the same as love. That peace, not predictability, is what your soul is craving. It's the moment you stop saying, "It's fine," when it clearly isn't, and begin saying, "This isn't who I am anymore." As you wake up, something powerful happens. You start taking responsibility for your part in the story. Not the blame, but the responsibility. You recognize that while you may not have caused the disrespect, You allowed it to continue by staying quiet, by compromising too much, by confusing love with endurance. And that realization is not meant to shame you. It's meant to empower you. Because once you acknowledge your role, you also reclaim your power to change it. You see that every time you chose peace over truth, you were postponing your freedom. But the moment you choose truth, peace follows naturally. The act of waking up also redefines what love means to you. You stop craving the thrill of being needed and start valuing the stability of being respected. You stop seeing love as something that completes you and start understanding it as something that complements you. You begin to want a connection that adds to your life, not one that consumes it. This shift is profound because it changes what you accept, what you tolerate, and what you believe you deserve. You no longer fall for words. You observe actions. You no longer chase love. You attract it through your self-worth. Waking up is also the moment you realize that solitude is not punishment. It's healing. You stop fearing your own company because you finally enjoy being with the person you've become. You rediscover parts of yourself that you had hidden to keep the peace, the curiosity, the laughter, the confidence, the creativity. You realize how much of your identity was muted just to maintain harmony. You start remembering who you were before you learned to apologize for existing. That reconnection with yourself is the beginning of true freedom. When you choose dignity over comfort, you begin to experience a different kind of peace. The kind that doesn't depend on anyone else's validation. You stop performing emotional labor for people who refuse to meet you halfway. You stop trying to convince anyone of your worth. You become content in the quiet certainty of your own value. And that confidence, that serenity, becomes magnetic. People who once took you for granted no longer recognize you because you no longer respond the same way. You've stopped being available for your own destruction. There will always be a temptation to go back, to return to what's familiar. But every time you think of going back, remind yourself of what you felt when you were there. The constant doubt, the exhaustion, the smallness. You cannot wake up and go back to sleep in the same dream that was breaking you. Waking up means staying awake, even when the truth hurts. It means choosing growth over comfort, clarity over illusion, and peace over attachment. It's the recognition that real love will never require you to betray yourself to keep it alive. The real awakening is not the end of love. It's the beginning of self-love. It's when you finally stop waiting for someone else to value you and start treating yourself as sacred. It's when you stop mistaking attention for affection and control for care. You begin to understand that the love you were searching for in others has been waiting inside you all along. You wake up the moment you realize that your peace, your respect, and your dignity are not negotiable. And once you see that clearly, you never go back to sleep again. In the end, this entire journey, the heartbreak, the awakening, the silence, and the rediscovery, leads to one truth: respect is not something you beg for, it's something you embody. When someone fails to honor who you are, that's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their blindness. The moment you stop waiting for them to change and start changing how you show up for yourself, everything begins to shift. You stop living in reaction to their moods, and you start living in alignment with your own values. That's when you finally reclaim your power. Because love without respect is just attachment, but love rooted in self-respect becomes liberation. So, if you're listening to this, and you feel that quiet ache inside, the one that whispers you deserve more, don't silence it this time. That voice is your awakening. It's your reminder that you are not here to be tolerated. You are here to be valued. Don't be afraid to walk away from what dims your light. Respect yourself enough to choose peace over pain and clarity over confusion. Because the life that's meant for you will never require you to shrink to fit inside it. Good luck on your journey to rediscover your worth and rebuild your peace. May you walk with courage, speak your truth without fear, and never forget that you are deserving of love that feels like freedom, not control. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes, waking up is the most powerful act of love you can give to yourself.